Okay, come here a minute. I want to share something with you. It's part of the secret sauce to the Cost Plus Bid Center, okay? And it's these 3 1-foot cabinets that have nothing in them. Come back and I'll show you more in this episode of A Cabinet Vision Minute. Okay, so what is it about these 3 cabinets that's peculiar to the Cost Plus Bid Center? And that is that each one of these cabinets on this wall is 1 foot wide. Now, 1 foot wide means something in the bid center because we have this bid method called per linear foot of base, per linear foot of upper, and per linear foot of tall. Okay, so back to the elevation here. This 1 foot cabinet, regardless of the materials involved here, and this 1 foot upper, regardless of its materials, and this 1 foot tall cabinet, regardless of its materials, costs X amount of dollars to produce that cabinet. And we use this in Cabinet Vision to come up with linear foot pricing. We just multiply this cabinet cost times the linear footage of cabinets we have for each one of these bases, uppers, and talls. So we have 66 linear feet of bases. We'll multiply this times 66 feet and we'll have a price or a cost that that we're going to include in our estimate for those cabinets. Okay, I have a really low number inside of the bid center and I'll share it with you right here. So the cost per linear foot for base cabinets, I have $60 and I have $65 for uppers and I have $85 for tall cabinets. How did I come up with those numbers? Well, for you to use. Now you may want to use these and that's fine. I would bet that in most cases these numbers are going to be just great for you, and you'll know by comparing, but I'll tell you more about that later. What I do want to share with you is how I came up with such silly low numbers. Okay, so remember that in these cabinets there's no doors on here, there's no drawers, there's no shelves. Well, this one has a fixed shelf, but that's part of the carcass of the cabinet. So really what we're looking at here is what this cabinet cost to produce up to this point. In other words, what are the factors of production that got it to the point where we can throw it up against this wall here? And those factors of production are these. This is a little chart I made up, factors of production. I think if your shop is kind of like my shop, it takes some time to load materials into the racks. I don't know for each one of those cabinets, but I'm going to guess there was just seconds involved in loading materials into the racks for each one of those cabinets. Unloading materials for the racks, same way. And I'm not talking about a whole sheet because there isn't a whole sheet. Really, if you divide out the actual materials that we've used and look at the time that you've actually managed those materials up to this point, for loading and unloading, really we're talking about seconds or even fractions of seconds in some cases, okay? What is the time needed to load the CNC? What time is needed to label parts, etc.? So I took all these example factors of production in my shop and we're going to assign them some time to do this so we can see up to this point, what did it cost to create that? Okay, so I'm just going to go through these really fast. Moving parts to the next station or cell, loading the edge bander, loading and using the horizontal boring machine, staging parts to assembly, assembling the cases, took maybe a minute or two. And then bottom line is we're going to come up with a figure here in minutes, about, or probably in minutes, how long did it take to get that cabinet to this point, considering the time that we spent doing these things to get it to look like it does at this point. So that's several minutes. Now we need to figure out, well, what is the shop rate for doing that? And if you've taken, you've been to business school and you've gone through all of how to calculate a shop rate, this is not the same shop rate. It's more of, if you've heard of unloaded shop rate, this is more closely related to an unloaded shop rate. In other words, we don't factor in materials yet in this point. Cabinet Vision calculates materials in another place, which I'll show you in a different, another video. So I'm going to call this shop rate that we're going to calculate as a simple unloaded shop rate. Simple unloaded shop rate. The simple unloaded shop rate is what I used to calculate those numbers that you see in the linear foot price for those bases, talls, and uppers. Okay, so here's how I did it. To calculate a simple unloaded shop rate, I add up all the shop expenses for a random 30-day month. And I've got, just in this example, $6,000 for rent. I've got some loan that I need to pay on for the equipment. I've got payroll for 7 people. And don't ask me how I calculated that. I don't know, but it's let's say that's the real number. And I've got some utilities, and that big dumpster out back costs a whole lot of money to dump that. So altogether, in this 1 month, I have $15,040 variable expenses for the shop. So this doesn't include any hardware for any cabinets. It doesn't include any materials for the cabinets at all. This is just shop's expenses for a 30-day month. So I take then that subtotal, $15,040, and I divide it by 22, which is the average number of working days in a month, which gives me the shop daily rate, which isn't really doing us any good anywhere, except that it gives us the next one, which we divide this number by 8 to come up with our simple unloaded shop rate of $85. Okay, so remember this $85 for a second as I go back to Cabinet Vision now. And we, again, we look at this, the bid center, the rate table for cabinets per foot. Okay, so that's going to give us 3 line items, one for each cabinet. Base cabinets, $60 a linear foot, $65, and $85. So even if it took us 1 full hour to produce that cabinet and take the tall cabinet as an extreme, we're going to, on paper here, we're going to make good money if we charge $85 for our linear foot cost. Now remember, that's just to build the cabinet, doesn't include the material prices. This is just how I calculate where I got these numbers from. I get, Bruce, how did you come up with those numbers? How do I know those work in my shop? Go back and watch this video again and go through this exercise yourself and have a look at this, what I call this simple unloaded shop rate, and calculate this for yourself. You'll be surprised. And that's how I come up with linear foot pricing in the Cost Plus Bid Center. That'll do it for today. Thanks for joining me on this episode of a Cabinet Vision Minute. To find out more about the Cost Plus Bid Center, go to craftsmanengineering.com. That's craftsmanengineering.com. We'll see you on the next episode.